In a quiet suburban town, a scandalous secret lay hidden beneath the surface of a seemingly normal marriage. The story begins with Mark, a devoted husband who worked long hours to provide for his family. He loved his wife, Sarah, and believed they were building a bright future together. However, cracks in their relationship began to show when Mark noticed Sarah's sudden changes in behavior. Little did he know, these were signs of betrayal that would shatter his world. One fateful evening, Mark returned home early from work, planning to surprise Sarah with dinner. As he pulled into the driveway, an unsettling feeling crept over him. The house was eerily quiet, and Sarah's car was still parked outside. He stepped inside, calling her name, but there was no response. A chill ran down his spine as he walked through the house, his heart racing with an unexplainable anxiety. Mark's instincts soon led him to check their bedroom. What he found inside was nothing short of devastating, a scene that would change everything. There lay Sarah, intertwined with another man, lost in a moment of intimacy that should have been reserved for their love. The sight tore through him like a lightning bolt, igniting feelings of rage and despair all at once. Unable to comprehend the scene before him, Mark felt the ground shift beneath his feet. In a whirlwind of emotions, Mark fled the house, seeking space to think. But as he paced outside, anger consumed him. How could she betray their vows like this? Memories of laughter and dreams together flooded his mind, now tainted by her infidelity. His anguish morphed into a desperate need for resolution, a way to vent the overwhelming pain that had taken residence in his heart. With his mind racing and his heart pounding, Mark jumped into his truck. In that moment of turmoil, he made a decision that would lead him down a dark path, a choice fueled by heartbreak and rage. What started as a quest for answers would quickly spiral into a tragic confrontation that no one could predict. The town was about to witness an event that would leave everyone questioning the lengths to which love and betrayal can drive a person. Mark and Sarah had always appeared to be the perfect couple in their small suburban town. They met in college, where their chemistry blossomed over shared classes and late-night study sessions. After graduation, they tied the knot in a charming ceremony surrounded by friends and family, filled with dreams of a bright future together. With their first home purchased, Mark worked diligently to build a career in marketing while Sarah pursued her passion for graphic design. As years went by, the couple celebrated many milestones together: anniversaries, vacations, and the arrival of their beloved golden retriever, Buddy. However, beneath this seemingly idyllic life, subtle signs of trouble began to emerge. After the birth of their first child, the couple faced the challenges of parenthood that gradually strained their relationship. Late nights with a crying baby left both feeling exhausted and distant from each other. In recent months, Mark began to notice changes in Sarah's behavior. She started spending more time away from home, often claiming she was busy with work projects or meeting friends. While he encouraged her independence and supported her ambitions, a nagging feeling began to grow within him. Occasionally, he caught her texting late into the night or staring thoughtfully out the window as if lost in another world. Conversations that once flowed easily became stilted and forced. Sharing laughter over dinner was replaced by awkward silences as they both retreated into their own thoughts. Mark tried reaching out to Sarah, asking if everything was okay, but she brushed him off with vague reassurances that everything was fine. During this trying period, Mark confided in his best friend about the strain in their marriage. His friend suggested it might benefit them to seek couples therapy or reconnect through date nights. Despite his friend's advice, Mark felt hesitant. He didn't want to admit that things were falling apart. Little did he know that Sarah's growing distance was not just due to stress from parenting or work. It was an indication of something far more painful lurking beneath the surface, a betrayal that would soon change everything they had built together. As Mark continued grappling with his suspicions, he found himself trapped between hope and fear, unaware of how close he was to uncovering a truth that would shatter his world. As the weeks passed, Mark's unease grew stronger. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong in his marriage. One evening, after putting their child to bed, he decided to confront Sarah about his concerns. However, instead of a meaningful conversation, he was met with vague reassurances and a promise that things would get better. Yet, the more he tried to connect with her, the more Sarah seemed to drift away. One Saturday afternoon, while cleaning out the garage, Mark stumbled upon an unfamiliar receipt buried under some old boxes. It was from a fancy restaurant he recognized, but knew they had never visited together. The date on the receipt was just a week prior. His heart sank as he felt a knot form in his stomach. Who was she with? Unable to shake his suspicions, Mark began to pay closer attention to Sarah's behavior. That same week, he noticed her phone buzzing constantly with messages. Whenever he entered the room, she would quickly hide the screen or change the subject. Mark recalled a time when he casually asked to see her phone, only to be met with a defensive reply that left him feeling uneasy. The further Sarah pulled away, the more Mark's imagination ran wild. One night, while trying to sleep, Mark heard Sarah whispering on the phone in the living room. Curiosity got the better of him, and he quietly crept down the hall to listen. He could hear her laughter. A sound that used to bring him joy now felt like a stab to his heart. As he strained to catch every word, he realized she was talking to someone in a way that felt far too intimate for comfort. The following day, Mark decided to take action. He called a friend who worked in local law enforcement and asked for help tracking down Sarah's activities. Although it felt wrong to invade her privacy, desperation pushed him forward. With his friend's assistance, Mark discovered that Sarah had been seen frequently with a man from her workplace, a coworker who had always seemed friendly but never raised any suspicion until now. The pieces began to fit together like a puzzle. With every new detail uncovered, Mark's heart raced with anger and disbelief. As he pieced together the evidence of Sarah's betrayal, he found himself standing at a crossroads, one that would lead him to the heartbreaking confrontation that awaited him just days later. Mark sat in the dim light of his living room, his heart heavy with despair. The truth about Sarah's affair weighed on him like a crushing stone. Every memory they had built together, their first date, their wedding day, the laughter shared over family dinners, now felt tainted and bitter. He recalled the warmth of her smile, now replaced by the cold reality of betrayal. How could she do this to him? How could she choose someone else over their life together? Anger surged through him, igniting a fire that burned deep within. Mark was furious, not just at Sarah, but at himself for not seeing the signs sooner. Each detail he had uncovered seemed to amplify his sense of humiliation. The restaurant receipt, the late-night whispers, and her defensive responses felt like daggers piercing through his trust. It was as if she had been leading a double life right under his nose, and he felt foolish for not recognizing it. At times, Mark found himself battling waves of heartbreak that left him breathless. He would sit silently in their bedroom, staring at their child's empty crib while wondering if he had failed as a husband and father. The dreams they once shared, of raising a happy family and growing old together, now crumbled into dust before him. He couldn't shake off the image of Sarah with another man. It haunted him day and night like a shadow that wouldn't retreat. In his anguish, Mark felt an enormous sense of loss. It wasn't just the love he craved that was slipping away. It was the very foundation of their life together. Thoughts raced through his mind, questions without answers. What did she see in him? Did she ever really love him? Could they have done something differently? As Mark faced these emotional tides, feelings of rejection crept in, making him question his worth as a partner. Did he fail to be what she needed? In moments of quiet reflection, tears streamed down his face as he grappled with a painful truth. Love could sometimes morph into something ugly when trust was broken. Feeling utterly alone in this turmoil, Mark's rage began to take root in something darker, a desire for revenge against those who had shattered his world. Each passing moment increased his sense of desperation and betrayal, leading him closer to making choices that could change everything forever. The day of the confrontation dawned with an eerie stillness in the air, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Mark awoke with a heavy heart. The sun shining through his window felt unwelcoming. He had spent the night tossing and turning, haunted by thoughts of Sarah and her betrayal. Today, He was determined to confront her about the affair. No more hiding from the truth. As he prepared for the day, Mark's mind raced with possibilities. What would he say? How would she react? He imagined different scenarios, each one filled with anger and heartbreak. He took a deep breath, trying to center himself before heading out to work. But instead of going to his office, Mark decided to take a long drive to clear his head. The streets felt empty as he drove, reflecting on memories of their life together that now felt so distant. Later that afternoon, Mark found himself parked outside Sarah's workplace. He watched as employees filed out for the day, searching for any sign of her coworker, his rival in this painful love triangle. His heart raced as he spotted Sarah laughing and chatting with another man across the parking lot. The sight twisted like a knife in his gut. It was one thing to suspect betrayal. It was another to see it unfold before his eyes. In that moment, Mark felt a surge of adrenaline and anger course through him. He knew he needed to confront them both now, to demand answers and face this head-on. Gathering his courage, he stepped out of his truck and approached them. As he got closer, Sarah caught sight of him, her expression shifting from joy to shock as she realized what was happening. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice tinged with panic. "Who is he?" Mark demanded, pointing at her lover with a trembling finger. The man shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. Sarah tried to explain herself, but her words felt hollow and insincere in Mark's ears. The anger that had simmered inside him exploded into a heated argument, accusations flying back and forth like arrows. Passers-by began to stare as their confrontation escalated. In that charged moment, Mark's emotions spiraled out of control. The combination of heartbreak and rage blurred his vision as he turned back towards his truck, fueled by an overwhelming urge to escape the pain flooding through him. He couldn't shake off the feeling that everything in his life was unraveling right before his eyes, a tragedy waiting to happen. With every ounce of emotion boiling inside him, Mark made a choice that would change everything forever, a choice driven by despair and fury that would lead him down a dark path none could foresee. As Mark turned back to his truck, a whirlwind of emotions surged within him: rage, despair, and a desperate need for release. The sound of Sarah's voice faded as he climbed into the driver's seat, but her stunned expression remained etched in his mind. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as his heart raced like a drum in his chest. With a sudden burst of energy, Mark slammed the truck into gear and sped out of the parking lot. The engine roared to life, echoing the chaos swirling in his head. He felt a sense of urgency driving him forward, as if going back meant confronting an unbearable truth he wasn't ready to face. The road ahead blurred as he accelerated, the world outside becoming a dizzying blur of colors and shapes. As he approached a nearby intersection, Mark's thoughts were consumed by images of Sarah and her lover. Their laughter, their intimacy, that made it feel like his heart was being ripped from his chest. The pain morphed into anger that fueled his foot on the gas pedal. The truck roared down the street as adrenaline coursed through him. In a moment of dark clarity, Mark spotted them again on the sidewalk just ahead, Sarah and her coworker still wrapped in their world of laughter and treachery. They were oblivious to the chaos unfolding around them, oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. Everything else faded away as he focused on them with laser-like intensity. There was no turning back now. Time seemed to slow as he gripped the wheel harder, every second stretching painfully longer. Panic surged within him. Thoughts clashed as he battled between reason and raw emotion. Should he confront them again? What was he really doing? Suddenly, before he could weigh his options, a wild impulse took over. Mark swerved the truck toward the sidewalk where they stood, heart racing in sync with the engine's roar. For a split second, everything felt surreal. A haze enveloped him as he became entranced by the thought of retribution. As if in slow motion, he saw Sarah's face turn from laughter to horror as she realized what was happening. The collision came with a sickening crunch, shattering glass and splitting air with a loud thud that echoed through the streets. Panic erupted around him as he hit the brakes too late, but it hardly mattered now. Everything had changed in an instant. Screams filled the air as people rushed toward the scene and chaos erupted. In that harrowing moment, when time finally snapped back to reality, Mark found himself frozen behind the wheel of his truck, heart pounding wildly as he faced the devastating consequences of an irreversible choice, one born from betrayal and heartbreak that would haunt him forever. The moment Mark's truck collided with Sarah and her lover, time seemed to freeze for those who witnessed the horrifying scene unfold. The sound of shattering glass and the sickening crunch echoed through the street, sending a wave of shock rippling among passers-by. People stood frozen in disbelief, their eyes wide with horror as they processed what had just happened. Screams filled the air, mingled with gasps and cries for help as the reality of the accident sank in. A few bystanders rushed forward, shouting in panic, desperate to assist. "Call 911," someone yelled, while another person knelt by Sarah, who lay motionless on the ground. Her coworker was also sprawled out nearby, clearly injured and struggling to breathe. The scene quickly turned chaotic as more witnesses arrived, some trying to lift Sarah's body gently, while others called for emergency services to hurry. Within moments, sirens pierced through the shock of the crowd, growing louder as police cars and ambulances raced to the scene. The flashing lights created an unsettling contrast against the backdrop of chaos, a symbol of hope amid desperation. Paramedics jumped into action, assessing the situation with practiced urgency. They quickly determined that both Sarah and her lover required immediate medical attention. While one paramedic tended to Sarah's injuries, another worked on her companion. Their voices were calm but firm as they shouted instructions to each other amid the chaos. "We need a stretcher over here," one called out urgently while assessing Sarah's condition. The crowd watched anxiously, unable to look away from the tragedy unfolding before them. Meanwhile, Mark sat in his truck, stunned and unmoored by the whirlwind of emotions crashing over him. He felt completely detached from reality as he observed the scene play out before his eyes. Panic settled in his chest as he realized the gravity of what he had done, not just to Sarah, but to himself and their child, who was now left without a mother. As police officers arrived at the scene, they quickly began to take control of the situation. One officer approached Mark's truck cautiously and knocked on the window, urging him to exit the vehicle. "Sir, we need you to step out now," he ordered firmly but calmly. Mark could barely process their words. His mind was racing with guilt and fear. He knew that he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As he climbed out of the truck, legs shaky and heart pounding, the weight of his actions sank deeper within him, marking the start of a long and painful journey ahead, filled with consequences that would forever alter lives in their small town. The aftermath of the tragic collision marked the beginning of Mark's harrowing journey through the legal system. Once the dust settled and the shock of the incident wore off, authorities moved swiftly to address his actions. Mark was charged with several offenses, including vehicular assault, reckless driving, and causing injury or death due to negligent behavior. Given the severity of the situation, particularly with Sarah's condition and the injuries sustained by her lover, prosecutors painted a grim picture of a man consumed by rage. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the prosecution argued that Mark's actions were premeditated, driven by deep-seated emotions stemming from betrayal and heartbreak. They presented evidence of his escalating anger and emotional turmoil as indicative of a man who had crossed a line from pain into criminal intent. Witnesses who observed the confrontation before the accident testified about Mark's demeanor, suggesting that he had been in a state of fury. The prosecution contended that this was not a moment of blind panic, but rather an action taken with reckless disregard for human life. Mark's defense team faced a daunting challenge as they sought to mitigate the charges against him. They argued that Mark was in a state of emotional distress, highlighting how the trauma of discovering his wife's infidelity had drastically impacted his mental state. They pointed to his history as a devoted husband and father, asserting that this incident was an aberration fueled by overwhelming feelings of betrayal and despair. In their view, Mark did not set out to harm anyone intentionally. Rather, He was a broken man acting in a moment of irrationality. As the trial progressed, discussions arose surrounding potential plea bargains that could lessen Mark's sentence. His defense hinted at exploring options for voluntary manslaughter or reduced charges if he accepted responsibility for his actions. The idea was to emphasize his remorse and willingness to seek help for his emotional struggles. Ultimately, the courtroom became a battleground for conflicting narratives, one portraying Mark as a cold-hearted aggressor and the other depicting him as a victim of emotional circumstances. The jury would soon be tasked with determining whether Mark's actions were those of a man driven to madness by betrayal or an individual who lost control in a moment of heart-wrenching despair. Each day brought fresh tension as families on both sides awaited the verdict that would shape their lives forever. The shocking incident sent ripples through the small suburban community, leaving friends, family, and neighbors grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. In the days following the collision, conversations buzzed in coffee shops, homes, and on social media as people tried to make sense of what happened. Many were horrified by Mark's actions, struggling to comprehend how a devoted husband could turn into a perpetrator of such violence. Friends of Sarah rallied around her and her coworker, offering support and prayers for their recovery. They organized fundraisers to help cover medical expenses and created online support groups where people shared their shock and disbelief. The community came together to show solidarity for the victims while expressing sympathy for Mark's family, a difficult line to walk in a town where everyone knew each other. Meanwhile, Mark's friends were torn between their loyalty to him and their revulsion at his actions. Some defended him, claiming he was pushed beyond his limits by betrayal and grief. Others distanced themselves from him, unable to reconcile their image of a loving husband with that of a man accused of heinous acts. Whispers filled the air about how someone could become so enraged that they would take such drastic measures. Local churches held vigils for both Sarah and Mark, praying for healing and understanding for all involved. Community leaders expressed the need for mental health resources as they realized that emotional pain can escalate into tragic outcomes if left unaddressed. We need to talk about these issues before they lead to violence, one pastor stated during a sermon attended by many in the town. As the trial approached, tensions simmered beneath the surface of community interactions. Some residents took sides, those who believed in Mark's emotional turmoil versus those who couldn't forgive his violent outburst. This divide strained relationships among neighbors who had once considered each other friends. Parents worried about the impact of this incident on their children, discussing openly what it means to handle betrayal with grace rather than anger. Teachers incorporated lessons on empathy and conflict resolution into their curriculum, hoping to equip future generations with better tools to cope with heartache. As verdict day loomed closer, many felt the weight of uncertainty as if they were on trial themselves. A community forced to confront its own vulnerabilities in light of personal tragedy and loss. The implications of Mark's actions rippled far beyond him. They reshaped connections within the town and ignited essential conversations about love, betrayal, and emotional health that would linger long after the courtroom drama concluded. The tragic events surrounding Mark's actions serve as a painful reminder of how infidelity can unravel relationships and lead to extreme consequences. Infidelity, at its core, shatters the trust that forms the foundation of any romantic bond. It breeds feelings of betrayal, insecurity, and heartbreak, emotions that can push individuals to their breaking point. In Mark's case, his world crumbled when he discovered Sarah's betrayal, blurring his ability to respond rationally in the face of overwhelming grief and anger. The fallout from such emotional turmoil extends beyond just the individuals involved. It ripples through families and communities. Mark's violence not only altered the course of his life, but also left a lasting impact on Sarah, her lover, their child, and their entire town. The incident uncovered the raw vulnerability in all relationships, highlighting how easily love can turn into a source of pain when trust is broken. While many may view Mark as a perpetrator of violence, it is essential to recognize the emotional landscape that contributed to his actions. The complexities of human emotions cannot be underestimated. Even the most devoted individuals can find themselves consumed by despair in the face of betrayal. It raises questions about how we manage our emotions and the importance of seeking help when faced with relationship struggles. As discussions around Mark's case continue in the community, many begin to grapple with broader themes of trust and betrayal in relationships. Conversations shift toward mental health, emphasizing the need for emotional well-being and coping strategies for dealing with heartache. Couples start attending workshops on communication and conflict resolution, recognizing that open dialogues can help prevent situations from escalating to violence. The tragedy also prompts parents to engage in deeper conversations with their children about trust, love, and respect in relationships. They urge their kids to learn from Mark's story, understanding that unchecked emotions can lead to unintended consequences. There is a collective acknowledgement that everyone, at some point, may feel betrayed, but learning how to navigate these feelings constructively is crucial. Ultimately, as Mark's story unfolds, it serves as a cautionary tale for communities everywhere. Infidelity can lead not only to personal devastation, but also to societal repercussions. The need for open conversations around trust and emotional health is more urgent than ever. As we reflect on these themes, we are reminded that love must be nurtured with honesty and understanding to prevent the shadows of betrayal from darkening our lives.